Have you ever seen a game on Steam and watched some of the trailers and you're like, wow, this is impressive. Why haven't I heard of this game before? With lots of other games popping up frequently, as well as flavor of the month popularity going all over the place, sometimes there are really great games that just fly completely under the radar. I've been digging for some criminally underrated video games on Steam, and I have come across Atlas Fallen. I saw some of the trailers and I said, you know what, this looks fun. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. And honestly, why does nobody play this game? Why hasn't anyone talked about this game? Between the combat in this game, the movement, the open world, there's so many features that give it that really immersive feel and an engaging experience. Honestly, you should really be giving this game a try. But first, we need to talk about why you may not have heard of Atlas Fallen. So the month is August 2023, in which Atlas Fallen has released as a third-person open-world exploration RPG, where you play as an unnamed character. Literally unnamed. You can't name the character. There's no tying element. You are just person. Your person finds an ancient gauntlet that empowers you in many different ways. And basically you go on a path of slaughter to fight the god who is oppressing you. In a nutshell, that's the story. Now, I was trying to think about why you may not have heard of Atlas Fallen, and the large elephant in the room, the game of the year from last year. If you remember, on August 3rd of 2023, Baldur's Gate 3 was released. In the ensuing months, it completely enveloped most of the gaming sphere's talk of the town. What the people were playing, the popularity of that game was just unheard of. And with Atlas Fallen being released on August 23rd, if it didn't stick the landing hard enough, it wasn't even going to be a blip on the radar. And it didn't stick the landing. A lot of the preliminary reviews of the game talked about how, while yes, the combat is fun, fast, and engaging, the story really wasn't that gripping, it wasn't that immersive. The voice acting at times felt janky and almost like robotic. There were some issues with visual effects, frames per second. It didn't do what it needed to really stand out in that crowd. Under the huge shadow that Baldur's Gate 3 casts, it needed to be damn near perfect for it to even stand out in the crowd, which it didn't really land. The game initially had 575 reviews, and about 41% of those were negative reviews. That's not going to make a game stand out. That's not going to provide it that launching pad it needs to get the attention that it deserves. And then even with that, you can't necessarily blame Baldur's Gate 3 for being the issue here. More so, the game did not have what it needed to catch up and explode in popularity. Although it didn't help that Baldur's Gate was just knocking it out of the park. August 2024, Atlas Fallen received the Rain of Sand update. This was a free update that was pushed out into everyone who had the game and all those who would download the game thereafter. And this update completely flipped the script on everything that this game had to offer. We're talking revamped visuals. We're talking brand new voice acting cast, new zones in the game, new enemies, new challenges, a fourth difficulty. There was a lot of features that were put into this game, a lot of time and effort that was put into this game to bring it up to, well, in this sense, a really high standard, a really good standard for a game that initially really didn't hit its mark. But even still, the game did not surpass its initial Steam charts peak concurrent players of over 2,000 players playing at one time. When the 2024 update was pushed, they got upwards of like 500 or so concurrent players, which is notable for a game that was barely pushing 40 to 70 on an average day. However, I will say that a lot of the excitement and the hype around the game really has kind of fallen flat, and I don't believe that it is deserved. So I went ahead and picked up the game, and I went ahead and put some time into it, and let me just say, it is fantastic. It is such a fun game, and many of the features in this game really do shine. Combat in this game is so damn addicting. It is so good. On top of beautiful visuals and just an immersive open world, there's a lot of things that go on, but let's talk about the combat. So the gauntlet that you find in the beginning of the story has many different combinations and many different attacks, and you can fit them out to be whatever you want to be. Playing on PC, your attacks are either your left mouse click or your right mouse click, and these flow wonderfully into a combination system. So at first I thought that if I was just attacking with my left mouse click, I was going to do that's the most amount of damage. Okay, cool. When I found out that you can weave in other mouse clicks, it ends up dealing a lot more damage and being a lot more fluid as you go through. Your character feels less repetitive and janky. Your character responds a lot better to you doing these attacks. So some combination would be like left, left, right, and then that would do a special chain attack, which deals more damage, or at least it feels like it does more damage. But once I figured that out, it made a lot more sense. The game kind of built in on itself from there, and it was actually just a really cool discovery. But what are we talking about in defenses? So in most games like this, and this obviously not being any different, there is a dodge mechanic. Simply put, your left control button allows you to dodge in whatever direction that you are moving, and it's just a short-range dodge. However, I was under the assumption that it provided iframes, or immunity frames, invulnerability frames, however you wish to call it. This is not the case. Essentially, your dodge button does nothing but scoot your character a distance and their respective hitbox, depending on whatever direction that you were facing. So if I dodge left, my hitbox moves along with there. So if the swipe is coming from the left, it's still going to hit me. I'm not provided that immunity as I am moving through. I died many times figuring that out. Now, that being said, there are some uses of the dodge abilities, like a large AoE attack that you can dodge up and out of the way. And honestly, the other major defensive that we use, which is called parry or stone skin, it's your parry, I felt like was a lot better moving forward. It was a lot better of a defensive in this sense. It made more sense, and I'll explain that here. So pressing Q on a mouse and keyboard provides you with sand skin. It offers temporary invulnerability from everything. It blocks all incoming attacks who were about to land that. Now, what's interesting about that is that if you land the parry appropriately, you negate all damage done to you, as well as freezing the enemy for a short time, making them vulnerable for a counterattack. That's really cool. And then even like the larger bosses that you have to fight in this game, it could take multiple parries, like 2 or 3 parries back to back to back to completely freeze them for a short time. But it still affords you this sense of dodging, blocking, and evading. That is what I found to be your main defensive. Now, this isn't a bad thing in any way, shape, or form, because there are multiple indicators of when an attack is coming in and when you should be parrying. Both visual and audio cues are played. It really did provide that kind of really responsive work, and you were paid off better. You were rewarded for your better play, the higher the skill ceiling. Essentially, you could dodge back and away and move up and out of the way if you were timing it appropriately, and you could cover enough distance to get outside of the hitbox. But the parry felt a lot more engaging, and it became more of a skill issue than it did a, we'll say, invulnerability. And I will say that this is a great feature. However, it felt as the combat evolved and there's multiple enemies attacking me, it felt like the make or break aspect of the game. Either you learned how to do these quick time parries, or you would die frequently. That was the major juxtapose that I felt in this game, is that if I didn't understand when to parry, and if I didn't master my parry, and if I didn't hit my marks, then I was going to die. And that's also due in part to the momentum bar, which I'll talk about here in a moment. However, the game's system combat heavily depended on the parrying in my mind. So the momentum bar is a system that builds up down in your bottom left. As you are dealing damage and taking damage, your momentum bar fills up. As the bar fills up to certain different tiers, you will then deal more damage, have larger ranges on all of your attacks, and your combos will be absolutely ridiculous. Essentially, you're building the momentum up to tier 3, where you were just absolutely smashing through everything. There is a catch, though. The other side of that is, as you were dealing more damage and have more range, you were also taking increasingly more damage. So think of this very much like you're a berserker. So you're dealing more damage, but you're taking more damage. Now, this is a really cool feature, and it really pairs well with the parry sand skin ability, which I do, but it really made some encounters really, really stressful. And it basically meant that, like, if I was down to like 1 or 2 HP, it's either I parry every attack or I die. And it made a lot of encounters really, really, we'll say, stressful, because as I'm building up momentum, which happens fairly quickly, if you're not paying attention to it, a single hit or two will absolutely devastate you to the point where you're dead. This became like a forefront when I got into some of the other game's challenges, like the Watcher's Fury, which I'll talk about. I loved. It was my favorite part of this game. But the constant buildup of this momentum bar as you were going through really did provide that extra oomph. You felt powerful. And not to mention that you can expend all the momentum by pressing the F button for PC, and you shatter. And now a shatter basically freeze frames everything, allows you to perform this ultimate mega combo thing where you just absolutely shatter and destroy everything that's in front of you. Some enemies, if they're glowing blue and you hit your shatter button, then you automatically kill and defeat them whatever stage that they are in. This is a really cool feature because as the momentum bar fills up against tougher enemies, if you get that very quickly, you can essentially eliminate them very quickly. Again, you still have to dodge, you still have to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, because if you don't, you are taking increased damage. You're gonna get knocked out. It's a really interesting system. It really emphasizes that you have to be good at the combat. You have to master the combat to go anywhere really in this game. And again, I played on the harder difficulty, and that was my choice, and that probably also led to a lot more stressful situations. It was really engaging to have the momentum bar fill up and then for you to land all these different attacks. Now, also paired with the momentum bar are different traits that you can unlock throughout your journeys. And as the momentum bar fills up, those traits that you've preset for your build will unlock as the bar crosses those specific thresholds, which is really, really cool, because then you can kit some things out where it's like, okay, if I shatter at this point, it's going to refill my idol, which is my health potion, or it's going to do more damage, or if I get to across this threshold, I'm going to take less damage. Like, there's a lot of different combinations that I found just in the short time that I played it, and it has been incredible. Now, the main enemies that you fight in this game are sand wraiths, which are, we'll say, just sand effigies that are held together by runic armor, and they take on like very animalistic traits. Like, we're talking snakes, we're talking crabs, we're talking tigers. There's a lot of really cool diversity in their movesets and what they do. However, what's really interesting about these sand wraiths is that the larger enemies, because there's essentially three categories, which are the lesser wraiths, the large wraiths, and then the colossal wraiths. The latter two really have all these almost like boss-esque quality features about them, where you can destroy their specific armor, and you have to destroy the armor to defeat them. It's not just their health pool, you have to destroy the armor. And that also requires you to be within those certain hitboxes on that particular creature. So take, for example, the crab boss. If you were fighting him, you could damage his face, but you also have to break one of his claws. And if you don't break one of the claws, you'll just break his face, and now you can't hit his face anymore, and he'll still keep swinging at you, and he basically gets enraged. So it's this really dynamic flowing combat that you have to adapt to what the enemies are doing and then overcome it from there. And then on top of that, a lot of the larger wraiths have these different armor spots that if you break and then you kill the boss, you receive extra loot, which can be some items, it can be some different traits that can drop. It's really, really fun. And it's mainly fun because it's rewarding your good play. If you're strategic and you wait and you time your attacks and you break the armors in the way that they need to, it really does pay off. And I think that's something that's really, really fun. It's like there's like this little skill mini game that goes on there. Really, really engaging system. And I will admit, I did die quite a few times trying to pull this off, just trying to get the different traits and the stuff that could potentially drop if you destroy the extra armor. Not necessary, but still fun. Now, kind of flowing from combat, the movement in this game is peak in my mind. So of course you've probably seen it in the trailer, and you unlock it like almost immediately in the game, is sand skating. So your character can sprint. That is something that is set up right from the gate. You just press shift on the keyboard and you're good to go. Now, the interesting thing about this is that once you cross over into the sand, you will start skating on the sand. Now, I don't know necessarily if this is just a visual effect. I don't know if it's any faster than just sprinting, but you don't have an option to sprint. And it seems as if I was moving from one terrain to the next, I didn't go faster, but it feels a lot more engaging. It feels more RPG-like. And that's the only way I can explain it. I honestly spent like a good 10-15 minutes once I first got it, just skating around because I was really enjoying that aspect. Not only that, you get a double jump, you get an air dash, which can then be further upgraded to have more charges, go further. There's all these different adaptations to movement, which is key in this game. Even pairing with the combat and jumping, you can essentially stay in air for quite a while, like almost indefinitely, if you were landing these attacks frequently. It really does provide like an engaging experience. Not only paired with that you can slide in on your sand dash and attack an enemy straight out of it. I don't think it does any more damage, but visually it looks really, really good. And again, I don't know if any of this actually makes you move faster, but you are going to have to cover quite a bit of distance, especially when exploring the open world, which the open world is incredible. It is absolutely huge. This whole game is, in my mind, built for exploration. You're in this giant sandbox, no pun intended, but it's obvious, and you get to go out and do whatever you need to. Go slide over here. Let's go check out this moose pond and see what the animals have to do. Oh, there's an elite foe that I can go and challenge, I can go and deal with. Here's an anvil. Anvils act as almost like a save spot, a fast travel, upgrades and all that. That's your main hub. But there's all these different features that you can go and explore. I mean, I'm not even talking about the treasure maps or the hidden chests or the other side quests that you could find in that time. There's so much going on into this game just in the open world exploration that isn't even the main story. But there are a lot of different wonderful elements of exploration in this game. And without a doubt, the open world is just visually stunning. It feels alive with all the different wraiths that jump up to attack you. You find these different characters who are all just trying to live and survive in this hellhole. It's really cool. So if I am talking about immersion, I do have to talk about the story. Even now in 2024, the story is somewhat lackluster. As I was going through and talking to the main character, as well as we'll essentially say your gauntlet buddy in Niles, I didn't feel like an intrinsic tie to figure out what was going on. Now, the voice acting has improved drastically, at least from what I could tell. I didn't really receive any kind of experience that it was a negative thing. I mean, there are some character animations that really feel kind of like not smooth and janky, but the voice acting is there, and it really does add that good layer of like, okay, you have my attention at least. The story really isn't that like riveting thus far. It's been very forgettable, if I'm to be honest with you. However, in my mind, this is the game's weakest point. The combat really overshadows it. I could care less, honestly, about the story because I just want to get back to smashing enemies. Like, without a doubt, the peak moment that I had in this game was the Watcher's Fury, when I overcame one of those specific events. So pretty early on, you can get a quest to go and look for a Watcher's Fury, which is something that happens as you are traversing into the desert. Essentially, the sun god just incinerates your mind. You're stuck into a ripping sandstorm, and the sandstorm essentially sends waves of enemies at you, and you have to defeat them all in one life, or you die and you fail the event. This was one of those like peak fun moments that I had, and like I'm still geeking out about it because it was challenging. It was so challenging. And again, I will make note that I am on the harder difficulty because I like the challenge, but overcoming that challenge gives me that boost of euphoria. So the Watcher's Fury has you in this, we'll say, sandstorm that's going on, and these different mobs pop up. The first wave is light mobs that can easily be defeated. Second wave is slightly harder. Third wave is pretty hard. And fourth is a colossal wraith, which is one of these massive, like huge epic boss fights that have different mechanics that all happen. They spawn in little wraiths and laser beams and all these other cool things. Really a fun, engaging bit of combat that I had in here. It probably took me about like 20-25 minutes from all the times of dying and not parrying appropriately, not having enough HP. It was just really an engaging experience. And it was one of the ones that I was like, ooh, that's a lot of fun. That's a lot of fun. And apparently you get different rewards as you go through one of these events. And there will be spots as you are exploring out in the open world where there's a chance that it will happen. Basically, you linger out into the desert too long and then you'll get sucked into the sandstorm. It was one of the most fun aspects of this game that I had experienced. Don't get me wrong, the exploration's fun, the combat's great, but having this like wave by wave challenge, like right out the gate within like the first 5 to 6 hours of playing this game, it was a peak moment for me. I loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun. Yes, Atlas Fallen has received some flack, but after the 2024 update, the improvements far outweigh it. It is such a criminally underrated ARPG. The combat and the action in this game is just so darn addicting that you just want to keep going out there and pressing yourself, quite literally, against the anvil and trying tougher bosses and finding different creatures, and really an engaging aspect with there, because once you pull off the combos perfectly, it's incredibly satisfying. And no less for this game to be set up in a massive, beautiful open world that really thrives on exploration and character movement. There's a lot of features about this game that are just winners. I can't believe that it's flew under the radar for so long. I really cannot believe. With the cost of this game being $40 on Steam, it's not a terrible price to pay for this game, and it's just really engaging aspects of an RPG. For full transparency, I use my Fanatical link, which I was able to get this game on sale for about 20 bucks, and it seems like it pops up often on discount here and there, so I recommend playing the game. If you can get it on a deal, go ahead and get it. I've included my link down below, so if you guys are interested in checking it out, you can probably find it for a lower price. However, that deal changes frequently, and the current one only has a couple of days left on it. Now, have you played Atlas Fallen? If you have, I'm curious. I want to see if you guys had the same thoughts that I did. You can leave a comment down below. If you guys are interested in RPGs, I've also been playing Final Fantasy 16 recently, which has come out to PC, and it's just absolutely bonkers. It just smashes the expectations that I had on that game. And you can see that video here. Otherwise, stay caffeinated, folks.